Welcome, everybody. My name is Mushrat Ahmed Landayu. My preferred address is Mish. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I will be your facilitator for this session. This is the morning keynote. The topic is accepting collective responsibility. And knowing Dr. Thomas, we are in for a treat, but also a ride. Let me briefly introduce you to Dr. Dave Thomas. He is an occupational therapist with a remit towards social justice, and he has 2 decades of experience in this area. The fuller bio is on the symposium platform. Dr. Dave Thomas will have 45 minutes for his presentation, and I will turn off my camera when he starts, and I will reappear when there is 2 minutes left of the presentation. We have approximately 15 minutes after the presentation for questions from the audience. You can put your questions in any time into the Q&A platform and vote for any questions you see there that you would like asked. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you very much, Mish. You might hear some music in the background. I'm just teeing things up. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mish. And for those colleagues who have joined us this morning, thank you so much. I really appreciate this invitation to have this conversation with you all, and I'm really looking forward to this. Full disclosure, for this talk, I was going to prepare a detailed presentation, but then I realized that I'm amongst friends, and friends who have always supported me, so it's probably easier just to speak and speak candidly. So what you heard just now was Love Supreme by John Coltrane, and it's something that's quite dear to my heart, something I listen to a lot. So I greet you this morning in the name of love, justice, and equity. And I am what I am because you all support me. So that's my greatest honor, to be supported by you all and to continue to do the work that I do, because that work is for the greater good. So just to kick things off, I will pay homage to the people who have done this work before. So people who have come and gone and made a solid contribution in promoting equity. And people who are currently doing this work, people at the coalface. I salute you and I respect your efforts. And also I want to give a big shout out to people who are motivated to do this work. So people who will do the work, because that is important. So if we don't intentionally include, we unintentionally will exclude. So there are those amongst us who speak of having hope, and I always start off with hope. So I'm just drawing on the scholarship of Professor Nicola Rollock here. So according to Professor Rollock, some people speak about having hope in the light of the stream of advertisements and TV shows now featuring not just Black and brown people, but also people with disabilities, different sexual identities, etc., etc. And according to Professor Rollock, her measurement of hope is very simple. The outcomes, the experiences, and decision-making powers of racially minoritized, and I've introduced here, marginalized and underserved groups must improve. And according to Professor Rollock, anything else is merely tinkering around the edges. So this was a really powerful piece that appeared in our print media back in 2021. And I like to use that piece just as a reminder of what we are doing and what we should be doing. So what's the current situation? So we have seen increased global attention to inequalities, particularly most recently, and I add here intersectional inequalities. Inequalities affecting people across a broad range of identity characteristics and also classes, right? Social class. But what we do know is that there is still currently unacknowledged and unreconciled historic injustices. So that still persists today. And also in terms of the people who arguably are most marginalized and underserved, we are witnessing persistent racial equity and racial equality gaps. So that is something that has become even more so prominent and prevalent with the this Brexit situation, and also most recently in the heights of the pandemic. But what we also know is that health inequalities are fueled by broader social determinants of health. And as healthcare professionals, we've all interacted with the Marmot reports and other subsequent reports and the review of that report, etc., etc. We also know that climate justice is a problem, and climate injustice is a more insidious problem. And that affects people who also are marginalized and underserved. So according to the UN Secretary General, there is a delusion that we live in a post-racist world, and the myth that we're all in the same boat. And while we're all floating on the same sea, according to the Secretary General, it's clear that some are in super yachts, while others are clinging to drifting debris. And so, in order just to illuminate this, I've chosen this image for no particular reason, of course. But the reality is that people from minority ethnic group and other marginalized and underserved groups experience poor treatment. And this treatment that we are seeing, some of us experiencing, are due to negative attitudes of others regarding their character or abilities, right? So people making assumptions. And I think that's very lazy. Making assumptions, very, very lazy, right? And we know that. So we've also seen that racist attitudes have been shown to affect health in a variety of ways. And here I'm showing you just a synopsis of the ways in which inequality promotes stress. And as healthcare professionals, again, and others, we know the pathways of stress and ill health, right? So we know. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to consume this, this diagram and just to reflect. So how does inequality promote stress for you, or for your clients, or your colleagues, or your patients? To what extent have you seen these manifestations in your daily activities, in your daily interactions? And then reality again. So the Health Foundation in 2020, they mentioned that racial discrimination affects people's life chances. And we know this again from some of the work in public health around the social determinants of health. And these life chances are affected negatively in many ways. For example, restricting access to education, to employment opportunities, in some cases to clean water, to food. And the stress associated with being discriminated against based on race, and I will add here, intersecting identity characteristics and also social class. And this directly affects people's mental and physical health. So again, reflecting on the extent to which you have seen this in your daily interactions, or the extent to which you are seeing these more prevalent. But the greatest reality is that healing will require recognition. So is there an awareness that this is actually happening? And to what extent can we And I say we as the collective we. To what extent can we illuminate these aspects in a manner to ensure that the healing can take place? And again, just drawing back on the opening gambit, I want to be a force for good. So I greet you again in the name of justice, fairness, and equality. So to what extent can we ensure that the healing starts and the recognition of these insidious acts are brought to the fore? So I just want to introduce here two concepts. So collective guilt and collective responsibility. So collective guilt refers to group members feeling guilty about the harm inflicted on others by their group. Forget one of the by's there, you didn't see that second by. So by their group, right? So people feeling guilty because they are part of the broader group that inflicted harm on a group. This sense of guilt that comes with it, right? Collective guilt. So whenever we speak or whenever people speak about people who are green, a green person automatically becomes, feels guilty. It is not me, I didn't do it, but people from my group do it. So people may feel collective guilt about their group's action, even if they're not personally involved. So when we speak about historic atrocities committed by members of their group, sometimes it evokes a sense of guilt, right? This is what collective guilt is, right? So how is it manifested? So it could be manifested in individuals feeling a sense of shame. I can't believe that people like me did that. That is such a bad thing. You should never have to experience that. And also sometimes individuals apologizing on behalf of the broader group members, right? So something that happened 500 years ago, I'm apologizing because I'm part of that group. So that is a manifestation of collective guilt. But there are limitations with collective guilt. Although it can play a role in facilitating intergroup reconciliation and forgiveness, it could be harmful because some people could evade these feelings of guilt. It wasn't me. I am only 22. I wasn't born 500 years ago. That's got nothing to do with me. That's not my reality. And this could pose barriers to action. I don't need to do anything. It's them. In fact, if you believe in reincarnation, when people are all reincarnated, you pick it up with them. It's nothing to do with me. And it threatens intergroup's moral value. So it could mean that some people within the group are feeling a sense of moral worthlessness. So they become impoverished morally, right? And some could be unable to feel guilt when they believe that the action was legitimate. Well, you know what? They did that because some people aren't human, they are subhuman. So this is the way that they would have treated subhuman people, right? So the action was legitimate, or it was their property. They were free to do whatever they want to do with it, or it is. Or actually, those are the attitudes that were enacted in those days. So it was okay. And then feelings of guilt depends on collective identification with the group perpetuating the harm. Well, I don't really identify with that group. It's got nothing to do with me. So the antithesis of collective guilt, collective responsibility. So this is the belief that individuals in the group are responsible to fix the harm caused by other individuals in the group, right? Everyone has a role to play. You have a responsibility. And the manifestations here could result in collective activism. Well, this is about being human. and about being fully human. We acknowledge that the harm has been done, or harm is being done, and we all have a role to play in repairing those damages, particularly people like me, who are part of that group that did it. So it could also result in individuals raising awareness of the problems and suggesting solution-focused action. So here comes to the fore allyship. Raising awareness of the problems and suggesting solution-focused action. So not just stopping at the raising of awareness, which is good, but how do we move the agenda forward? And also collective activism. The greatest part of collective activism is listening. Listening to the groups that are most affected. So introducing here standpoint theory, as coined by Professor Patricia Williams. Collective activism standpoint theory. Standpoint theory suggests that the people who are most affected probably have the most knowledge and experiences of being affected. So their standpoint counts. Listening to these standpoints, bringing it to the fore, developing platforms for power sharing relationships. But the limitations of collective activism could result in or sustain or promote a lack of accountability. Well, you know what? If the group is doing it, I really don't need to do anything. Who will notice? Who will notice? I mean, we have enough hands on deck here, right? So I don't have to do anything. I could just be a part of the group. I don't have to be accountable for anything. But going back to the strengths, it can be empowering. It can be conducive to action. And we know, drawing on Mihaela Csikszentmihalyi, who speaks about flow, you know, about that autonomic movement, that flow. Collective activism can result in flow, right? Deliberate flow, I might add, intentional flow. I'm amongst a group, I'm empowered to do something, so I will do. And it can play a role in facilitating intergroup reconciliation and forgiveness. So as I started, justice, fairness, and equity, with love, with critical love. And collective activism can also create active bystanders. So not just sitting on the sidelines and watching the goings on, but actively rolling the sleeves up, getting involved. And last but not least of this selection, reparations. How do we repair what has been damaged or lost? And that is the question. To what extent can we repair? Can we acknowledge and repair? So I want to pose 3 questions to colleagues at this point. So we speak about the thermometer versus the thermostat. So 3 questions, colleagues, and I really invite you to engage with these questions. So what is the function of the thermostat? What is it used for? I mean, I'm not a gas fitter or anything, right? I'm not a plumber, but I'm just asking the questions. What is the function of the thermostat? And what is the function of the thermometer? So we use these in our profession, right? What is the function of the thermometer? And all of this is within the context of promoting equity, right? Within that context. And which one are you? Are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? Which one are you? And you can't sit on the fence with this one. Which one are you? Okay. And there are no right answers, by the way. So, a thermostat adjusts to the temperature or the climate. So in the front room, the thermostat is set at 22 degrees. And Dave comes in and opens the door. The draft comes in and it becomes 15 degrees all of a sudden. He lets in the cold air. What the thermostat will do, it will go to work to get the room back to 22 degrees, right? So it's adjusting to whatever temperature. So as a thermostat, you could be complicit. I will only act when it really looks bad, right? When things look really bad, I will put out a statement. I will do something, right? Because it's the right thing to do. Now everyone's exposed. So I could probably perpetuate inequality that way. I see it happening to my colleagues and I say nothing. I've seen the policy and I didn't bring it to the attention of my line manager. It could also replicate inequality in some instances. I will employ someone who looks like me because that's easier. They'll get on well. They will actually work better in this team. It's easier, right? Or actually, the thermostat could promote some sort of avoidance. You know what? We will just wait until Dave closes the door and then the rest of the warm air will circulate. And I don't even need to get it back to 22 degrees, right? It will be 22 degrees at some point. So I'll just avoid working. I'm on the wall. No one's touched me. I don't have to work. I've avoided it and it will fix itself. In fact, I saw a piece of data that by 2070, degree awarding gaps in higher education in the United Kingdom will redress itself if we do nothing by 2070. I'm not sure I'm going to be here, right, at that point, but it will fix itself so we can just avoid acting. Or the thermostat can pose problems all the time, right? I think it's less than 22 degrees. And I think the front room is actually 14 degrees. The bedroom upstairs might be 13. So these are all just the problems. I'm just telling you the problems here. I'm just a thermostat. I'm telling you where it's coldest in the house, right? Or the thermostat can say, you know what, in order just to make it go away for now, I can just perform some actions performatively, right? Let's just do this. Or Dave keeps making this noise. Let's do this to keep him quiet. Or actually, the thermostat could say, I'm aversive. I have friends who are like that. So my behaviors are not bad because it couldn't be because some of my friends are blue, right? Or some of my friends are from that background. So no. I can't be accused of that. On the other hand, the thermometer sets the temperature or the climate. It will be setting it, right? And I start here. So it tests it and sets it in this context, with critical love. Critical love. What is critical love? Critical love means that because we want to humanize each other, because I love you, I will tell you what's wrong. Not in a destructive way, in a manner to transform our environment for the greater good. Critical love means that I will make trouble. I will make good trouble. The type of trouble that will transform the environment, the type of trouble that just never stops creating solutions. Good trouble. Critical love means that I'm an active bystander. I won't pass it happening without attending to it. Critical love means that there's one thing that joins us all together, irrespective of our protected characteristics or class, all of those intersections. We're all human. So I will love you, even though we don't share the same standpoints. We don't have to. That's where criticality comes in. Respect, mutual respect. Critical love means that I will ask you for the receipts. What have you done in advancing this agenda for the greater good, for the good and benefit of all of us? Show me your receipts. Show me what you have done. You've said you've done it. I want to see the proof. Not because I'm outing you, but because critically I love you. Critical love means that I'm empathetic. Critical love means I accept responsibility. It is my responsibility. It is our responsibility. This is not a them and us. Critical love means that we're on the same team. I'm just lucky to be the one that scores the goal or lifts the trophy. But this is our team. And critical love also, we are all accountable. So you hold me accountable, I hold myself accountable. We are all accountable. But most importantly, critical love is a force for good. The good of the profession, the good of the society, the good for everyone, so we can all coexist. But again, questions still remain. To what extent is there a relationship between equity and unearned or unequal power? Is there a relationship? And friends, how can we harness the power of collective activism to redress structural inequalities? So we need to be chipping away at these structural inequalities. But how can we harness this power that we have? Because together we must be stronger. And then taking responsibility and accountability, responsibility, two separate entities. What is my role in this endeavor? Me. What am I supposed to be doing? Am I adequately skilled? Am I knowledgeable enough? Am I prepared to embark on and support others on this journey? What I'm not suggesting here is I'm not suggesting emotional labor, additional emotional labor. I am speaking about critical love. I need to be part of the movement for good. So how do we humanize each other in our quest for the common good? How do we continue to see the humanness? And what does it truly mean to enact equity? What does that actually mean for all of us? So I will leave you with this call to action, which I've used before. And again, for no political reason, no affiliation, but for the words that are written here. We must make this choice today. The choice is in our hands. Our people and our planet need it more than ever. So we can work with those who are ready, because the train is ready to leave. And some will argue that the train has already left. And those who are not ready yet, we need to continue to encircle them, to remind them that their people, not just our people, this is not a them and us. Their people need them to get on board as soon as possible. So collectively, let us keep this on the agenda. Let us enact critical love and collective activism to promote equity. So I've used one reference, and I think that might be my time. So thank you very much, colleagues. And I really am honored to be speaking to you today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the symposium. I will take as many questions as you can field, and I hope I do them justice.
Dave, could you stop sharing so we can see you full version? Thank you. Thank you. Well, you had about 16 minutes left to your 45 minutes. So you're finished quite early.
Unfortunately, I love people. So I often do this to give people a chance to interact with me, because I think it's probably less important that I be speaking at people and more important that I speak to them. So I'm quite happy to take the questions for the rest of the time.
Okay, so at the moment, I don't know, team, if you can see any questions. I can't see questions. I'm hoping that the audience is warming up. So I'll start off with a question. You spoke about critical love, and audience, please do ask your questions, because this is a great opportunity. We've got Dave in front of us for a bit longer than we thought we would for questions. So I think take this opportunity. But I'm going to start with critical love, because that kind of called to me the way you talked about it within activism, and that it is not just, you know, a friendly gesture, it is about realism as well. And I was wondering, Dave, where have you seen critical love being active and effective in creating movement in change?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your question. So the one example that just came to me is over the pandemic, when we had iconography, so statues being toppled. Now, it is really, really important for colleagues to understand the role of activists in all of this, right? Activism, as I've been told by Professor Kevin Hilton and others, it's not a one-lane highway. There's no one way of doing it. But what I will say is that the people at the coalface who probably are out in the streets shouting, demanding change, they play a very, very vital role. So critical love means I'm not seeing those people as irritants. Oh, can they just not stop talking so I can get on with my day? Because of their efforts. And remember that historically, some people have risked their lives for the liberty that we now experience, right? So critical love means that we respect each other in a manner that I respect your actions, I respect your contribution, and actually you are willing to ask the difficult questions, maybe so that I don't have to ask them, but I still have a role to play. So critical love means that we all are in this together and we see each other as an extension of us as human beings. You know, as one very, very good book tells you, the hand can't see, and the body is made up of many members, right? With many functions. So critical love means just appreciating all of these functions. And actually, our systems and structures must be able to stand up to scrutiny. So the fact that it's being interrogated by an activist somewhere, this shouldn't promote any nervousness if it's robust enough. That should be used as a black box moment, as Matthew Said speaks about, you know, a black box moment, the black box in the airplane. It's not there to catch out the pilot to say, well, the pilot wasn't flying the plane properly. What it's there to do is to record that journey. And in the event of an accident, it can say, well, actually, we could do this better. So that's where critical love comes in. Not just love, but I'm critiquing you because I love you, because I want to be in an ecosystem where we can all coexist.
Wow. Well, I'm feeling those words, but I also kind of feel quite tired of giving the love and giving the patience and waiting. And I think you're reminding me what
But
that critical love means.
You see, Mish, one of the things that has also come to my attention is that we must remember that people who have come and gone before us, they're giving people, we're giving people, right? As human beings, we're giving people, right? And, you know, I must say, on a personal level, I don't think anyone is beyond redemption. So it is tiring, right? But that is love, you know, that's what families do, right? You're in a family and you just have that one person. Oh, don't give Dave too much fruit punch because he might behave bad and tell us all the truth. That's just what happens in families, right? But we still love each other, right? That's just the way it works. It is tiring. And it's just to appreciate that and bring that to the fore. I am tired. I've told you this many times. We need to see the receipts. You are not acting. This is the way, you know, we think you could realize growth, marginal gains, right? Because again, it's moving it away from problem posing to problem solving, right? Problem solving. This is happening, and I think this will represent a solution. So that's how that level of criticality.
Dave, we've got some questions in the question and answer platform. I'll ask the first one. This is from Deborah Hewson. You make a great point about listening to the most affected. Can you share with us the most effective way of doing this? Can we be more proactive?
Brilliant question. And again, I really appreciate your question here, because listening is a skill that most people cannot master. And my dear friend, Professor Jason Arde, reminded me on, when was it, Wednesday, you know, that people seem to struggle with the fact that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a specific reason, right? So how can you do this? I think exposing vulnerabilities through cultural humility is really important. Humility is important. So the listener has to be humble enough to accept that they don't know. You have to create the environment where the person who's telling you feels that sense of agency, because they won't disclose if they don't. So developing rapport and trust, and we do this as healthcare professionals. What this means is that we have to relinquish power and create equal power relations. So I'm not suggesting that the CEO now becomes the band 3 occupational therapist. What I'm suggesting is that in that conversation, the CEO makes it clear that, look, I'm here to listen. So I'm listening to you to understand. Don't worry about me being the CEO for this moment, because that power is not relevant here. This is about us as 2 human beings connecting on a human level, right? And it's about sharing as well. What am I giving you in order to get what you want? So if I'm not willing to disclose anything to you, why should you tell me, right? Why should you tell me? So again, this is about authenticity, about humility, about empathy, about creating those, and we can't guarantee safety, right? We can't guarantee safety, but about creating principled spaces where people can feel empowered to share their information and recognizing and valuing that information. Really important. So I spoke about standpoint theory, Patricia Hill Collins. You can, you know, check out those references. But in that standpoint theory, what I'm not suggesting is additional emotional labor. So we want all of these people who have been marginalized and underserved, bring them to a focus group, and they should just give us the information. We get the data, we have our data, and they go left, and we're happy. We can tick the box. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that you apportion value to that information. How do you demonstrate value as a leader to that information? Dave, I respect what you're saying and I value your opinion. In fact, how can we use that to shape our policies? I bring you to the table. Tell me about this. I give you allocated time in your work schedule. So essentially remunerating you, which is important, right? I give you, if it's in an academic realm, I give you workload allocation. If it's in a NHS role, I will actually create a a way of giving you time, principled time and space to have these conversations. So it doesn't come at a cost to you. So I value you, right? I want you to see yourself represented in the policies, the practices, the processes. So this is what I'm speaking about. But principled spaces are important. We are utilizing these principles. And if ever I operate outside of that, I want you to tell me, to remind me. This is where the critical love comes in. Dave, you're the CEO and you didn't listen. You changed that policy without consultation. We want to review it. And I need to be humble enough to accept that that doesn't represent the people who it is supposed to represent. So this is about power sharing, essentially, right? Equity doesn't work in unequal power relations. It just doesn't work. It's not sustainable. I hope I answered your question, your brilliant question.
Power sharing, I heard that really clearly. I have another question for you, Dave, from Dr. Tongai Chichea. I hope I have pronounced that correctly. And he says, thanks, Dave. I have met occupational therapists who are overwhelmed and angry and don't know where to start in terms of dealing with systemic racism in occupational therapy. What's your quick, I don't know if you can do a quick advice, and says thank you.
That's a wonderful question. And you know what? Such an important question, because systemic inequalities, it's not easy to shift those attitudes. It's not easy to chip away at the system, right? But collectively we can. Collectively we can. So again, solution focus. What is the solution then? You know, are we posing solutions and where? So again, I remember sharing a train journey with a brilliant colleague on Wednesday it was, and we spoke about this. To what extent are people who are on the margins getting into spaces where they can have conversations with the power brokers? How do we do these things? Because again, if we're having conversations in silos by ourselves, I don't think that will be effective in changing the narrative or shaping any structural forces that are in action. So are we in the right spaces and having the right conversations? So it's a when, where, and how do we have those conversations? Actually, are we creating spaces to have these conversations? So this network is one such space. And I know I've seen the growth of this network over the years, started with just an idea, as most networks do, to the point where it's now been taken seriously, right? Having direct conversations with the CEO, etc. So it's about, as a collective, what are our concerns? How can we use vehicles that are already in existence to bring those concerns to the people who make the decisions? Or how can we create vehicles, right? Because that's really, really important. We can't do it alone, but importantly as well, through that, you know, utilizing that collective activism and allyship, are we able to galvanize our forces and bring in our allies? Because we need allies. We need allies, right? This doesn't work if we try to do it alone. So if you take nothing away from what I've said today, it only, just take this. This endeavor to humanize or rehumanize each other can only work if we are all there on the train, moving towards that collective goal. It doesn't work any other way.
Thank you, thank you. So again, that thing about you can't do it on your own. You do need to have a collective of people from, I guess, many different groups to be on that train and galvanize forces to create change. Yeah.
Yes, of course. I think for me, it's less so even about physical diversity, right? Physical markers, because physical markers are physical markers. But we know that there are also some hidden markers of diversity which are more powerful than the physical, right? Okay, we can have a space which is populated by people that look like me, but it doesn't mean that they think like me. So are we harvesting collectively, are we harvesting cognitive diversity as well? You know, is that something that we even think about? We need to be in spaces or create spaces where people who don't look like us, who don't think like us, and that's where the criticality comes in. We see the world in different ways, myriad ways, to realize the same solution. And again, looking across our shoulders, looking across the pond, how has it been done, or how is it being done in other spaces? Our colleagues in USA, our colleagues in South Africa, in Brazil, how are they doing it? Inequality affects us all in myriad ways. But how are people doing it? This is something that it's, you know, it's taken ages, it's taken years, right, to manifest itself to the point where we are now. So this will not go away in 5 years or by 2070. I don't think so. So it's continuously, incrementally chipping away at it, but bringing people on that train, as that quote, BAMEOTUK quote mentioned, bringing people along. We can't lose people on the journey. Everyone needs to be on board, particularly people who don't look and think like me. We need your support. This is not a them and us thing. This is for us, for all of us. We are creating environment and ecosystems where we can all coexist, because we can.
Wow, thank you, Dave. We've got time for one more question. Are you all right with that?
I'm perfect.
Oh, actually, it's two more questions. Sorry.
Perfect.
The next question. Oh, first of all, there's a comment from Shirley Masterson. She says, "Thank you, Dave, for yet another enlightening talk. Every time I hear you speak, I take another takeaway, an analogy that can be used to help understanding. This time it is about critical love that I can use with my colleagues who listen but are doing this at arm's length, listening but not recognizing the action they need to take." So that was her comment. And then we have two questions, one from Dougleen Jackson. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for this insightful presentation. With operationalizing equity requiring impactful initiatives worldwide, what are some of the greatest challenges you see in our profession and beyond?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I think the historic, let me be careful here, but it's historic tentacles of power still remain in the profession. And I think it's really, really important. This is where the critical love comes in, because the context has changed, but the architecture and the furniture remains the same. So in order to move the agenda forward and serve the people who are supposed to be served, who we say we are serving, I think it's important to understand that the architecture needs to be recurated in some way. And that's not easy, because again, power is a really, really important ingredient here. It's not easy for people to relinquish power. But what I would say is that people aren't being decommissioned to the scrap heap in this relinquishing and broadening the power relations. It's about transformation. It's about transition as well, right? And this is where the criticality comes in. I don't think the model which we use to build our foundations, I don't think is fit for purpose in 2022. I think we've seen so much change. For example, I know that from what I've seen, occupational science is so important now, even more so than it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. This is something that as a profession, we need to be amplifying and working collaboratively with other professionals. So working in a transdisciplinary way. I think these are some of the things that, you know, we have to ensure that we're traveling and moving forward with other healthcare professionals, with society, attending to the needs of society, because we have an important role to play as occupational therapists. but we have to meet people where they are. That's what I wanted to say. We have to meet the people who we are entrusted to serve where they are, as opposed to asking them to meet us where we are. So this is like a community occupational therapist. You go into the homes, you go to different locations, you're meeting your patients where they are. It doesn't work. Not everyone has the capacity or the capability to meet occupational therapists where we have been for the past how many years. We have to get out there now, and that requires change, and it's uncomfortable. But we have to be uncomfortable. I think it's important for us as a profession to remain uncomfortable. But at this point, I think we're too comfortable. So this is where the critical love comes in. This is where us, you know, as a community, we are seeing the changes in our society. So we need to ensure that these changes, we are adjusting. This is the thermometer versus the thermostat. So our profession arguably could be seen as a thermostat at the moment. We want the patients to come to us. We want societies to come to us. So what about us being the thermometer? We're testing and adjusting accordingly, setting the temperature, being bold. I think we need to be bold. As a profession, we need to be bold. We actually need to become more uncomfortable. And that takes guts. And this is why we need everyone to be on board. It takes guts, and we will make mistakes, right? We should understand that as a profession, we will make mistakes. But what do we do once we've made the mistakes? Do we do, as Matthew Said says in his brilliant book, Black Box Thinking, do we use those errors in a black box way to transform our practice, or do we shy away from making the mistakes and remain comfortable? So I think we have some important questions to ask ourselves, but the pandemic has shown us that actually there's a role for occupational therapists, but we have to be brave, we have to be stronger, and we have to harness the power of collective agency. Thinking about diversity across the whole range of markers, are we harnessing that enough? Some groups are marginalized, but can we use the experiences of those groups to empower other marginalized groups and redress systemic inequalities? Are we acknowledging the historic harm and atrocities as a profession? Have we acknowledged that? So I think there are more questions than answers, but in acknowledging it, it doesn't mean that we are perpetrating it. It means that we are ready to repair the damage. And that does take guts. It will mean that we become uncomfortable. But if we're really, really invested in this endeavor, we will remain uncomfortable.
Thank you, thank you. Unfortunately, we can't ask all the questions so that we can keep to time, but thank you for answering all those questions and giving us more learning, more things to think about, and really kind of making us really understand about community, about the love and humility that comes with community, and working together across all populations, across all groups, because that makes us noisier, stronger, louder, more forceful. And I think I've heard that really loud and clearly in your presentation and in your answering the questions. So I'm going to round up the session, if that's all right. I know you have been on the conference circuit intensely this year, last year. I keep seeing your name pop up everywhere, Dave. But thank you so much, Dr. Dave Thomas, and thank you to the audience for engaging with us through your questions and for being here. And like I say, I honestly, there's so much, I don't know where to start in mentioning what I want to pick up and highlight from your presentation, because there were so many golden nuggets. And I'm sure you will agree with me, audience, that that was a keynote full of a lot of learning and a lot of takeaways. And I just want to inform the audience, although we're finishing a little bit earlier, that to come back at 11:45, but to step away from your screens, have a walk around, go and make yourself a drink, have a little nibble of something, but also to say that if you want to go to the symposium platform and have a peruse, there are videos there, there's a quiz there, the full bios of all our presenters are there, and it's a good place for a little time out. But also, like Kweku mentioned, we're getting ready for our next year's symposium. So we have funded this one through getting grants, but also through the kindness of donations on the GoFundMe page. So the next symposium will be crowdsourced through the GoFundMe link, which you'll find on the platform as well. Any amount is helpful. And yes, so the next panel will be facilitated by Kalima Ibrahim, and it is a panel of occupational therapy researchers. I hope you enjoyed that. So back with us at 11:45, so have a short break.